Yo, you guys, this is Blacklist to the Abyss, and you're watching my review for Violet Evergarden, Episode 1, the much anticipated Violet Evergarden Episode 1. Okay? This show has been one of the most hyped anime in years. I mean, this might even have more hype than Attack on Titan. People had this as one of the top 10 anime on my anime list before it even aired. Like, this has been one of the most hyped anime in years, and it's finally out, and I'm about to tell you whether or not it lives up to the hype. Okay, so first, just getting into the plot a little bit. There was a war. Okay, there was a war, and the main character, Violet, the show is named after her. Her name is Violet Evergarden. The main character, Violet, was one of the soldiers in that war. Despite being a minor, she had a genius level of fighting prowess, to the degree where people called her a human weapon. They also called her some not so. I mean, being called a human weapon is very flattering, but she was also called even less flattering things. She was called a tool without a mind of her own, and she was called a dog of the military as well. Though that's not really what they called her. The Major's dog, specifically Major Gilbert. They called her Major Gilbert's dog, which she didn't realize was an insult. So she actually likes the fact that she was seen as his dog, but that's neither here nor there. Fast forwarding a little bit, the war is over. Whatever side they were on, they won. We don't know what the sides were in this war, why the war was going on in the first place. We don't really know anything about it other than the fact that it happened. Now it's over, and Major Gilbert and Violet were on the same side in that war, and Colonel Hodgins as well. Okay, that's all we really know about it. Whether I don't really think the series is going to focus too much on the war. It doesn't strike me as the type of show to have villains that come in and stuff like that. I don't think we're going to see some former enemy combatants coming in trying to hurt Violet or anything like that. I really don't see that happening. The war here is, I'm pretty sure it's just a plot device in order to get things rolling. I don't see this really going anywhere. It's more so the relationships formed between the people who fought on the same side in that war that matter than the actual war itself. Okay, so fast forwarding past that point, Violet wakes up. She says that she's been in the hospital for 120 days, I think it was, a very, very long time. She lost her arms in the war, so now she's got mechanical ones now. She could do a really good Edward Elric cosplay if she wanted to. Because all the time she spent recovering, she's slowly been regaining her motor skills. And in her mind, the reason why she's hurrying with all of her rehab is because she wants to hurry and get back to Gilbert so that she can fight for him. And this part is where Colonel Hodgins comes in. Quite literally, he comes in. There's this Titanic-esque scene with this huge ship in port, and I'm assuming that's the ship that Colonel Hodgins came in on. Technically, I don't know that. Technically, this ship could have another meaning of some sort, though there's no way for us to know that. For now, I'm just going to assume that that's the ship that Hodgins came in on. But it was a really great scene, though. The directing there was fantastic. Just like making our way through the streets and all these streamers and everything. The letter was flying through. It was very well done. Everybody knew going into the show that the animation was going to be spectacular, and it did not disappoint. It lived up in every sense of the hype. The animation and the directing is incredible. Okay, but we all kind of knew going in that that's the way it was going to be. So getting back to the actual plot and everything, Hodgins comes in, and one of the first things Violet does is ask him about Gilbert, and that you can see that Hodgins had this pained look on his face when he got that question. Throughout the entire episode, he never once gives an update about Gilbert or his condition. And the one time here where it looked like he would, he actually got he was asked directly by Violet if Gilbert was alive, if he was okay, if his life had been saved. And when he was going to give an answer, he was interrupted by the nurse. almost as if she's saying, like, I know you want to tell her the truth, but doing that will hurt her and set her recovery back, so I'm just going to keep you from doing that, okay? And that leads Violet to assume that Gilbert is alive, because Hodgins kind of just told her, relax, everything's going to be fine. But you could tell when he said that, he had his fist clenched in his pocket, as if he was angry with himself that he had no choice but to lie to her in that situation. So despite the fact that Hodgins talks about Gilbert using the present tense rather than the past tense, we can pretty much assume that Gilbert's dead. Okay, or at the very least, at the very least, he's in some position where it would hurt Violet to see him, like in a coma or something like that. I highly doubt that, though. I'm pretty sure the dude's dead. I'm just that's the tone that we're given throughout the entire episode from every single character that knew him or interacted with him in any way. Okay, so pretty sure he's dead. And Hodgins clearly does not want to talk about it anymore. He tries to pivot, and instead of talking about Gilbert, he instead chooses to talk about what Gilbert wanted for Violet. It's clear that Violet pretty much lives for Gilbert. Every single thing she says, every single thing she does, it's in the context of Gilbert and how she can be of use to him. She doesn't really have a will of her own, which lends credence to that what people were saying about her before, about her being a tool without a mind of her own. Everything she does, it's all about Gilbert, what Gilbert wants her to do, what orders that he's giving to her, how can she be of use to him, how, what type of mission does he want her to go on, how can she be useful to him. Everything she does is about Gilbert, okay? And that's why she pretty much has a heart attack when she finds out that the emerald brooch that he gave her went missing. It's pretty much the last thing she has to remember him by. Of course, she doesn't know that he's dead. She thinks he's alive. But as of right now, the only thing connecting her to him is that brooch, and it's gone missing. Okay, the reason why that brooch means so much to her is because, like I said, it reminds her of him, but specifically, it's an emerald brooch, and Gilbert has green eyes, so looking at it reminds her of looking into Gilbert's eyes. And back in the scene, it's actually like the first scene we see in the episode, actually. It's when Gilbert watches her stare at this emerald and talk about how it reminds her of him, and you can see he gets this pained look on his face. He gets this pained look on his face when she says that, and that's most likely because it just reminds him, like, she cares enough. I mean, she doesn't understand the feeling, but she cares enough about him where just looking at a simple object like a brooch, it reminds her of him and the closeness that she wants to have to him. And she doesn't, like I said, she doesn't understand the feeling that she has, but it's clear that she cares about him, and seeing her demonstrate those feelings in the only way she really knows how, it hurts him because it reminds him of the feelings he has for her, because we learn later in the episode that he loved her. All right, and the idea that he pretty much is, she has no choice but to fight in this war, and he is powerless to do anything to stop it. She's a kid. She's a minor. She has no business having to put her life on the line to fight in some war that really has nothing to do with her. She didn't start it. Her existence was a secret to the enemies. They didn't know about her until it was too late. Okay, so she's fighting in a war that has nothing to do with her, risking her own life, and because he loves her, he doesn't want to see her risking her life for something that doesn't really have anything to do with her, that she shouldn't even be involved in, yet she has no choice to be involved in it, and he is powerless to do anything about it. Okay, so you see that pain look in his face from her demonstrating the only way she knows how, the feelings that she has for him. And it's ironic because he doesn't want her to have to fight, but all she wants to do is fight, because that's the only way she knows to help him and be useful to him. That's the only thing she's interested in. But in reality, the best thing she could have done to help him, at least emotionally, is to not fight at all. So it's actually pretty ironic in that sense. But back to the brooch. It's very clear from the way she reacts. It's pretty clear from the way she feels about him that the brooch is pretty much the most important possession she has. It's the one thing that means the most to her because it reminds her of her connection to Gilbert. And Hodgins can tell. He can tell just by looking at it just how important it is. So he promises that he's going to find it for her. And I'm assuming that that's going to be relevant later on in the series in some way, incredibly relevant. Whether it's through whether it's through the journey he takes to find that brooch, or the people who currently have it in their possession. Maybe that brooch is what will convince Violet to live on without Gilbert in some way, or maybe it'll convince her of something else. Maybe it'll help her realize her feelings and invoke that love in her that she's trying to understand. When that brooch is going to be incredibly important in the story. Maybe not right away, but it will eventually come back. It has to. It has to. They put way too much emphasis on it for it to not be relevant later on. So it has to come back later on, and I guarantee you when it does, it will have some significant impact either on Hodgins or Violet or the story or all three. Okay. Now, at this point, Violet and Hodgins are leaving the hospital, and it transitions to life after the war. This entire first part was kind of just letting us know the way the world was and how the world being that way ended up affecting Violet. So now we're transitioning to life after the war, and we're starting to look towards the future of Violet and Hodgins. Hodgins leaves with her. He goes on a boat, a different one from the beginning of the episode. And they go to the city of Leyden, which is not only where the Evergarden family is, but it's also where his business is, which is convenient. The Evergarden, they're the ones who kind of take in Violet, or at least attempt to. That's where she gets her last day. Violet takes their last name when she becomes a part of the family. The reason why they went to the Evergarden specifically is because they were relatives of Gilbert. Gilbert trusted them, and at some point in time, I'm guessing in between that scene we see when he's injured and he tells Violet that he loves her, in between that and the time of his actual death, he at some point in between there had to talk to Hodgins at some point. So I'm assuming he gave Hodgins instructions and said, listen, the Evergarden's their family, I trust them, I want Violet to be able to live free and not have to worry about fighting anymore, so leave her with them, they will take care of her. Okay, and they try to make her part of the family, but Violet rejects them entirely. Like, it was actually kind of cold, some of the stuff they were saying, because they lost their son in the war, and Violet kind of hears that and says, so you just want me to be a replacement for your son then? But I'm not going to be a replacement for your son. As a matter of fact, I don't even see why I'm here. I never had a family before, and I don't need one now. So she just shut them down entirely. It was actually kind of rough to hear. So much, it was so cold that they didn't even want her to stay in their house. Like, they're still willing to support her financially because it's the right thing to do, but they're not ready to have her live in their house yet and stay there. So they had to kind of improvise later on in the episode. She's living in the attic, I believe, the Hodgins' attic, I think it was. But yeah, she said some pretty cool things. And Hodgins tries to leave, and Violet comes out. She's hurt because she's under the impression that Gilbert's alive, and he's just throwing her away pretty much. She takes it to mean that the only reason Gilbert would leave her there is because she no longer has value to him and that she's become useless. And she thinks, like, well, if Gilbert is throwing me away like this, then you know, just end it, because I have no use other than that. I have no other reason for living. And Hodgins tries to correct that notion and tell her that the war is over, tell her that fighting isn't necessary anymore, that she can live a life, but she doesn't know life outside of Gilbert. So she just tells Hodgins, if Gilbert doesn't want me around anymore, then dispose of me because I have no other reason to live. And that's when Hodgins that's when it really hits him just how serious the situation is and how serious her mindset is and how psychologically damaged she is. And that's when he decides he's going to bring her to his business. Where his business, he's a mailing service. Essentially, he will ship packages and letters, and he also has a department that will ghostwrite letters for people who don't know how to write. Because in this time period, a lot of people just don't know how to write. I would assume because of the war. It was a 4-year war, I believe. And most people probably had to quit school or just because they either had to fight in the war or work to support their families while other family members were all fighting in the war. So I'm assuming that has some reason for why people didn't know how to write, but at the same time, it's a 4-year war. It's not like it was 20 years, right? So it's not like these people hadn't had a chance to learn how to write before. So my assumption was that the war was a big reason for why they didn't know how to write, but that's probably not even really true. It's probably just the world that they live in, I guess, and they're trying to do some world building here and show you that this isn't, this technologically advanced society where everyone, it's essentially the norm that you gotta go to high school, graduate, go to college, maybe even think about going to grad school. Like that's not the world that they live in. They live in a world that is not nearly as developed as that, to the point where a lot of people don't even know how to write. And I would assume read as well. I don't know that, but usually the two are kind of paired together. If you know how to read, you know how to write. If you know how to write, you know how to read. So the reading and writing are usually paired together. So I would assume there's not much of that going on either. But that's just an assumption, and I'm kind of getting off topic here. The point is that Hodgins wants Violet to work with him at his company so that he can show her that she can help people. Maybe not Gilbert specifically, but she still can help people in other ways besides fighting. Okay, so she starts off sorting mail, delivering it, but the next day is when she experiences the ghostwriting department. Okay, and she watches how one of the women there understood this one man's feeling of love so much so that she was able to write out entirely what it is he was feeling perfectly, pretty much. And this is when we realized that Gilbert told Violet that he loved her, and she didn't understand the concept of love or what that feeling was, if it was even a feeling at all. She just didn't really understand what those words meant. So when she sees this woman here who knows exactly what this guy meant when he said that and was able to craft out an entire letter because of how well she understood his feelings, she decides that she wants to work with them so that she can start to understand those feelings as well as they can. That way she finally might be able to understand what it is Gilbert meant when he told her that he loved her. Okay, and Hodgins, it was the first time he actually heard her express any real individuality, an actual desire of sorts. She wasn't ordered to work with the ghostwriting department. That's something she decided on her own. And technically it still involves Gilbert, right? But like I said before, people before said that she was a tool without a mind of her own. But this was her deciding on her own what she wanted to do instead of looking for direction from somebody else, looking for orders from somebody else. So I think, especially with the latter half of this episode, I really think this episode gives us a really good idea of what the show is going to be. Gilbert's dying wish, I'll call it, his dying wish was for Violet to find a way to live on without him, to find new meaning in life outside of fighting, to live. He wanted her to run away and live free. That was his last official order to her. And Hodgins wants to help her do that because he feels guilty that he was complicit in her being made and forced to fight, and her being so psychologically damaged where she only sees value in her life through combat and fighting. He feels partially responsible for that, not because he came up with the idea, not because he made her do it, but because he sat there and watched and he was complicit as it happened. So he definitely wants to help her complete that final order, that dying wish of Gilbert. And it seems like that's what the show is going to focus on going forward. And the reason why, and I know that might seem obvious, like of course the first episode is going to give us an idea of what the show is like. Of course it does, but this show kind of reminds me of Plastic Memories in that regard, an anime from a couple years ago. That anime had a great, emotional, impactful first episode, but the next 10 episodes kind of just turned into a rom-com before that final episode kind of brought it all back and was another emotional, impactful episode. But judging from the first episode, Plastic Memories, you would never be able to know that the majority of the series is just a rom-com, and that's all it is. It's actually like the first and last episode, and maybe 1 or 2 episodes in between, are special. But most of those episodes, at least 8 of them, are just rom-com, cookie cutter. You know, it's nothing special at all. I don't think that Violet Evergarden is going to go in that direction now. So that's what I mean when I say that I think this episode gives us a good idea of what the show is going to be. I think that, unlike Plastic Memories, Violet Evergarden is going to stay true to this first episode. I think it's going to show us... I think it's going to show us a story of a girl who's trying to understand what love and different emotions are, and it's going to show her coming to understand just how Gilbert felt about her, and then probably eventually her coming to the realization that she feels that same love for him, probably when she gets the emerald brooch back, probably that'll be what kind of initiates it all and kind of connects the dots for her and makes her realize the reaction she has when getting that brooch back, like this love that I'm finally starting to understand from watching these people and working with them, this love that I think Gilbert felt for me. I think I'm starting to understand what that feeling is, and I think I might actually be having that feeling too, which will obviously eventually lead to heartbreak once she eventually finds out that Gilbert is actually dead, and that love will never come to be. But that in itself will lead to her realizing that she feels love for other things, and that there are things she can do besides fight that'll add value to her life. There are things she can do besides living for Gilbert. Gilbert doesn't need to be the end of Gilbert. Doesn't need to be the end of her life. It can be the start of creating a new her. And I think that's what this anime is going to build up to. So yeah, this was Violet Evergarden was an incredibly hyped up anime, and I honestly believe wholeheartedly it's going to live up. I really do. At the very least, the first episode did. So I'll give this episode a 9 out of 10. I thought it was great. The plot itself and the characters alone give it an 8 out of 10, but with that beautiful animation, that bumps it up to a 9 out of 10, definitely. So yeah, Violet Evergarden, hyped up, been looking forward to it for over a year. About a year, yeah. So I think we just need to buckle in and enjoy the ride, because I definitely think it will be a ride, an emotional roller coaster, packed with feels, and it'll just ruin us. It'll just ruin us mentally. So I'm gonna buckle in. I'm gonna look forward to that. So hopefully you all will keep watching too, because this episode was great, and I think the series will definitely be great and live up to the hype. And that is that, you guys. This first episode of Violet Evergarden gets a 9 out of 10, and that's that. Rate, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at BlacklistOTA, and I will see you guys next time.